I don't know what your notepad looks like on your iPhone, if you have an iPhone, but I probably have thousands and thousands of notes. And so I did a little note roulette, if you will, and I landed on August 16th, 2019. And I wrote, one of the biggest revelations we can have is to understand that we are already healed and whole, that we are the cosmos within the cosmos, and that we choose to repeat the same experiences over and over again. Because while karma is a pattern, what if within that pattern is the lesson or lessons that we chose to try and reconcile in this lifetime?
Hello, my loves. This is Johanna Burkhardt. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, healer, and author. And I am obsessed with all things metaphysical, esoteric, galactic, and of course, the healing journey. And I'm here to share my stories, my wisdom, and my teachings about being human in the illusion that we call reality. Welcome to Cosmic Blonde.
Hello, my loves. You know, a topic of conversation that has been showing up a lot lately in the collective, and I think it shows up all the time, but maybe I'm just more aware of it at this moment, is karma. And I've talked about karma a lot throughout the years, but most recently, the guidance from the guides has made it even clearer that karma is simply a pattern. And I'm sure you've all heard the saying, you can't keep doing the same thing over again, expecting a different result. And that's what we humans do. We repeat patterns and we keep doing things over and over again until we break the illusion or delusion or denial and see, oh my God, I've done this so many times. This is a pattern. And we choose to do something different. And that requires a whole lot of self-awareness. And as I've said many times, 90% of this healing is awareness. The other 10% is us choosing a different response, choosing a different behavior or action, or all three, usually. But I know for a good portion of my life, I repeated the same experiences over and over again, dressed a little bit differently. And I actually have this notepad. I don't know what your notepad looks like on your iPhone, if you have an iPhone, but I probably have thousands and thousands of notes. And so I did a little note roulette, if you will, and I landed on August 16th, 2019. And I wrote, one of the biggest revelations we can have is to understand that we are already healed and whole, that we are the cosmos within the cosmos, and that we choose to repeat the same experiences over and over again. Because while karma is a pattern, what if within that pattern is the lesson or lessons that we chose to try and reconcile in this lifetime, giving us an opportunity to reconcile it and choose something different. And when we don't get it the first time, remember, everything is a spiral. When we don't get it the first time, we probably had some shifts and changes. We probably had some adjustments in our journey. And so what happens is the energy begins, the energy builds, right? That comes to the peak where we have that opportunity to choose different or have a different awareness or to have a different action or response. And regardless of if we don't, especially, let's just say that if we don't get it right, what happens is it breaks, the energy breaks, and then we begin again, except this time we begin again. It's the same exact lesson, sometimes with the same exact people. Maybe their roles change a little bit, maybe the circumstances change a little bit, but the energy is always the same. And, you know, I say this all the time with inner child work and with healing in general. We don't ever have to go back to that other lifetime or go back to that childhood trauma or situation, because that part of us got frozen in time. I say that in quotations because we know time is an illusion, but it got frozen at that emotional development, that emotional intelligence. And so it can't really, that version of us, that aspect of us that, we are multidimensional, isn't able to comprehend or understand or move forward. It kind of gets frozen or stuck. And that's a nervous system thing. And so because of that, we will spend the rest of our life calling in people, places, and things that resemble the exact same energy or hold the exact same energy, but the stage is different. The circumstances are different. The people are different. But the concept of the movie is the same. So it's, again, it'd be like having a movie remade several times. The only thing that shifted was the characters, right? And maybe how it played out was a little bit different, but the whole premise of the movie was exactly the same. The lesson that the person was meant to learn in the movie is exactly the same. So we do that because that is what karma is. It's a pattern, pulling in people, places, and things to help us to reconcile and learn these lessons that we chose. And so the reason why this is so important is because sometimes we can beat ourselves up as to why do I keep repeating this? And it's because, well, you're going to repeat it until you're willing to see it and take responsibility for it and choose different. And then once you do choose different, it breaks the energy, and the energy is looking for a way to go. Where do I go? Where do I go? And so you have to, and you have to keep making that new decision or having that new response or new behavior. And again, sometimes it's all three, over and over again until the neural pathway is complete. And then you don't ever have to think about it again because the energy will just flow automatically. So a very mundane example of this is if, let's say, you get a new job and it's in a part of town that you're not familiar with. And so you GPS it. You're going to GPS it maybe for the first month, maybe even longer, maybe less. But you're going to GPS it until you don't ever have to think about it. You could be having a full-on conversation with someone in the car or jamming out on the radio or meditating like I tend to do when I drive. And you're just going to get there because you know it like the back of your hand. Why? Because you did it on repetition so much that it built a neural pathway. So now the structure is complete. Now the energy can just flow. And you just are in a flow. You know how to get there. You don't even have to think about it. It's not something that you need to focus on. It just happens. So this is why doing the work, as we like to call it, to change your neural pathways, to change your responses and your belief systems even, takes sometimes a shit ton of repetition. And so we think, oh my God, I learned the lesson, right? Let's just say you figured out the pattern. Like for me, there's patterns that show up in my life that have continuously showed up in my life. And I remember the first time I broke the pattern was like, oh, I made a different decision and nothing really changed. And I was like, why didn't the whole world change? Like, why didn't everything just open up for me? And why didn't the whole universe come to my feet? And it was because, well, you have to keep doing this, Johanna. Why is it still hard? Why I held a boundary. I spoke my truth. I stood in my power. I held my value. Why do I have to keep doing that? Why do these same people, places, and things keep showing up for me? Well, you have to continuously choose the new response, the new behavior, the new action on repeat until that neural pathway is complete. And then again, the energy will just flow, and then those people won't come anymore. So oftentimes it's not even that the pattern is coming because you haven't learned the lesson, and you'll know the difference. If you're holding a boundary every time, or if you're doing the new action, new response, new belief, whatever it is, you just have to be proud of yourself every fucking time you do it until you don't have to think about doing it anymore. It's just a natural response. But if those opportunities are showing up for you to speak your truth, to hold a boundary, to choose yourself, to choose your value, to stand in your power, whatever it is, and you're still stuck in your nervous system response from the trauma, well, one, don't beat yourself up. Have fucking compassion for yourself, because Jesus, we should be our biggest cheerleader and we should love ourselves the most out of anybody. and know that you're doing the best that you can, but also be like, what should I have done? What should I do next time? And then the next time it happens, do it scared. I recently was at one of these moments because one of my big lessons in this life is boundaries. And I have a few really big lessons. I think I'm a little bit of an overachiever. I think my higher self was a little bit of an overachiever and really, really believed in me. So I tend to fight with it a little bit. But regardless, I recently had a moment where I knew it was a boundary test. And I knew my boundaries were I knew that I was violating my own boundaries. Please let me rephrase that. I was violating my own boundaries when I started to feel anger and resentment. I say resentment is anger turns inward, where you're mad at your fucking self. You're mad in general. You're angry because you don't want to be doing the thing. But again, if you're doing something that you don't want to do, then you're violating your own boundaries. And there are times, let's be real, on the human journey that we have to do things that we don't want to do. But we know that we need to do them because they're good for us and it's the right, it's not everybody wants to eat right and work out, but we do it because it's the most loving thing to do for ourselves, right? So you have to know that you have to have discernment here too. But anyways, I was doing things that I didn't want to do, and I wasn't being very conscious about it. And when I would have the emotion, that was my cue, because our emotions are kind of like a GPS system, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm angry. Ooh, this is something I don't want to do. And I just stayed in the awareness. Again, awareness is 90%, right? So I was doing 90%. I was having the awareness. I was observing myself. But then I knew by feeling the pressure, I'm in resistance to doing all of these things. I have to make a decision. I have to do something. I have to take that extra 10% and have courage. And I had to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody who I knew would most likely guilt me and try to manipulate the conversation a little bit or negotiate even, and that I was going to be tested. And so I was working diligently to get into a neutral space emotionally so that I would not get triggered in that conversation before I had it. And I did have it, and it went just as I suspected it would. And it still hasn't even in this moment resolved. But my point is I took the action anyway. I took the action scared, and I had the uncomfortable conversation. And I'm going to have another uncomfortable conversation. But I'm going to have to keep doing this. And every time I need to put a boundary in, or I need to express myself, I have to do it, even if I'm scared. And eventually it will become so automatic that I don't ever have to even think about it. And I know this because when I look back, obviously I live a very public life. I kind of always have. I've always kind of put everything out there on the table. And I think as for who I am and as a spiritual influencer, as someone who wants to lead and by example and be the change, I've always been very transparent about my wins and my struggles, because I think that that's super important for people to see the humanness in you as well. And that we're not all perfect, and that I should not be put on a pedestal by any means, because I am a human and I am you and you are me. And we just might be at different places in our evolutionary journey, but we're not different. One's not better than the other. So one, never put anybody on a pedestal. But because of that, I've been able to kind of look back at my life. And recently, because of TikTok and Facebook memories, you can see these videos that you did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And I'm looking at this woman and I don't recognize her. I see how hard she's trying to be confident, because she wasn't. How hard she was trying to mask her insecurities, because she was insecure. And how much she still didn't trust in her gifts, even though she was continuously humbled by how accurate she was. And I had so much compassion. And sometimes I look back and I go, oh my God, look how far I've come. Because today, My content is not all driven around spirituality. It's not even all driven around healing anymore. Sometimes I just do dance videos on TikTok. Why? Because I just don't give a fuck. Meaning, I do what brings me joy. I do what makes me happy. I share from my heart. I share channeled messages when they come through. I share healing quotes when they come through. I share things, but I also share relationship woes and dating chronicles and transition videos and dance videos and whatever I want, because this is my life. Why do I have to put it in a box? And I'm so much more confident and I'm so comfortable in my skin, and I don't have to wear false eyelashes, and I don't have to wear excessive makeup, and I don't have to pretend anymore. Pretend that I don't care. Pretend that I'm confident, because I am. And that happened because, there's a lot of controversy over the fake it till you make it. It's not really faking it. It's doing it scared. What if it's not faking it at all? What if it's like, I'm not faking that I'm confident. I'm not confident, but I'm going to do this anyway. And I'm going to do it scared. And it's just not telling people you're insecure. What if you're just like, I'm just going to do this? And a lot of people are actually taken back when they hear that I had insecurities or I was not confident. But you sound so confident. And I said, yeah, because when I'm channeling, I'm speaking directly from the heart. And there's no doubt in that. So when you hear me speak and you're like, I feel so sure in my words and I feel so confident, that's coming straight from my heart. That's channeled. And that's pure. There's not an ounce of doubt in the information coming through. That's powerful. But the human side of me was super insecure. And that's okay. I don't have that problem anymore. But that took repetition. So karma is just a pattern of a lesson that we need to learn. There's another side of this that's really important, because sometimes when we place a boundary, we piss people off. We disappoint people. We hurt people. And it's never intentional. Well, I can't say never, but at least for me, it's never intentional. But when you decide to be a people pleaser and to make someone happy, or even when you decide to do everything for somebody, you are disrupting their karma. It's eventually going to come for them. It's eventually going to come for them. If you disrupt someone's opportunity to learn, it's just going to build strength. And honestly, their lesson's just going to get harder. The pain that they may inevitably experience may just be felt deeper. And so we should not feel bad for standing in our power and making choices that disappoint people or unintentionally cause pain to people, or piss people off. Because maybe this was part of their lesson to learn. Maybe you're a character in their story, right? I talk a lot about main character energy too, right? So I'm the main character. I'm the lead in this movie. And all of you are extras. And some of you are co-stars. Some of you have more leading roles than others. But you're all supporting and orchestrating a story for me to play out so I can learn. And so I'm going to be an extra in other people's lives, and I'm going to be a co-star in other people's lives. And maybe that is all by design. And I say maybe because we're going to talk about this from a very curiosities point instead of a channeled point. Well, I mean, I know that it is that way, but this is the way I feel guided to speak about it today. So when we stand in our power and we say, this doesn't work for me, it might hurt that person. It might upset them. It might disrupt their life. But maybe that's a part of their pattern. Maybe that's a part of their lesson. And if you get in the way of that, not only are you inflicting pain upon yourself and violating your own boundaries by doing something that you continuously don't want to do, or by trying to please somebody out of a trauma response. If they're safe, if they're happy, then I'm safe and I'm happy. Then you're just causing both of you more pain, because in the end of the day, karma is going to come for you. You're going to have to learn this lesson. And sometimes those lessons get thrown in your face. So when I left my third husband, I walked away. Let me take a drink. I walked away. He did give me a small financial payout, very small, in comparison to all of what I did for that marriage and family. And I'm not going to detail all that out because it doesn't really fucking matter anymore. The point is I thought there was multiple reasons why I did this. One, I was healing stage 3 adrenal fatigue. I could barely get out of bed. I struggled with body pain. I was extremely exhausted. I was stuck in a weight that no matter what I did, no matter how healthy I ate, no matter how much I worked out, no matter what I did, the weight didn't budge. And I was very sick. I was just very sick. And I hated it. My business was going downhill because of it, because I was so exhausted and I had no joy in my life. I wasn't inspired. I was, when you reach that level of burnout, it's a combination of stress and overwhelm and doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and a combination of not doing enough of the things that fill you up and bring you joy. And that's a deadly mix. And I did not have, and my second divorce was messy and expensive. It took almost 18 months of fighting in court with lawyers. And it was so hard on all the kids involved because I had a whole bunch of stepchildren that I helped raise. And I still love all of them. It was just traumatic. And I did not want to go through that again. And I did not want my kids to go through that again. And so it was twofold. I was too exhausted to fight. And I didn't want to disrupt my children. My son's room was the room that my dad was in before he died. It had a lot of my dad's stuff still up on the shelf above in his room. My son didn't want to leave the dogs. I couldn't take the dogs. And I would have had to sell the house. It just would have been super disruptive. And so I thought, I'm just doing the right thing, right? I'm just going to walk away. But I never really asked myself why I didn't do that for me. For me, the right thing would have been to split everything. It would have been to sell everything, because I put way more into that marriage mentally, emotionally, physically, financially than he did by a long shot. So for me to walk away with, next to nothing when I was already in a huge deficit financially and emotionally and mentally and physically from that marriage and not being supported the way, that was stupid of me. But also, I'm responsible in that because I stayed in that for I knew months in when I got there that I made the wrong decision. But I had sold everything I owned and drove cross country. I was like, fuck, I'm committed now. I'm not going back. I'm going to have to play this out. Don't ever do that. If you know right after it happens that you made the wrong decision, turn around, make a new decision. Learn from me, please, because it was painful. But I don't regret it because it was super important part of my healing journey. It was a super important part of my awakening journey. I don't think I would be who I am today without all of that, because he was my greatest mirror. He showed me every insecurity about myself. He made me face everything in myself. While he didn't do the work, I definitely did. And so I'm actually grateful for him. But coming back to the karma, a week ago, it was thrown in my face. And I'm not going to go into that story because it's not important, but it wasn't appreciated. It was thrown in my face that I had done the wrong thing by doing that. And I was like, you don't even understand. I actually did it for you. And I did do it for me too. But if I have to ask myself honestly, if I wasn't worried about the kids being disrupted, would I have pushed through even though I was so sick and fought for what was rightfully mine? And the answer is yes, I would have. So again, I made a decision with more weight and how it would affect somebody else than me. And it came back to bite me. And on top of that, that man didn't learn anything, really. He didn't have to go through any discomfort. He didn't have to go through any pain. He wasn't disrupted when I moved out there. He wasn't disrupted when I left. He never had to put any effort in the whole time because I didn't set the standard for him to do so. So that karma will come back for him. He will have to have an experience that's going to require him to have a lot of effort at some point. And that means things in his life are going to break. He may run out of money. He may have a bunch of car accidents. He may have more relationship issues. There may be a series of events that force him to change and be different. And maybe he'll never learn that lesson. And same with my children, right? So the lessons that when we impede on somebody else's journey, it doesn't just prolong their path and make the upcoming events more painful and more intense and bigger because now we really have to get your attention. But it also fucks you up. So you're not doing anybody any service. So you might as well stand in your power. You might as well make the choice that's best for you. Because our children chose us, whether they want to believe that or not. We chose our parents. We chose the exact set of circumstances we wanted to be born in to play out the lessons that we came to learn or that we chose to learn. Right? I was on birth control when I got pregnant with both of my kids. Neither one of them were conscious choices. And some people may plan pregnancies, but again, we know how people who try to get pregnant and don't, like if it's meant to be, it's going to be. Why? Because we choose our parents. We choose our life path. We choose how things are going to play out. Another reason why we should not have mom guilt or dad guilt for that matter. Because especially when we're doing the very best we fucking can with the level of awareness that we are currently at. So what is this trying to show us? The answer is multifaceted. I'm just going to read this. It's either one of two things. You are not in your awareness of what is happening, meaning you are not present. You are not taking responsibility for your partner. You are aware, but are choosing not to use your tools or to do the work to practice a new response, a new path or pattern. I know this because I have done it. Again, this past month, I've had major awarenesses, but I wasn't at the space where I was ready to take that to take the 10% where I had the courage to take the action until I was. And I had to have compassion for myself and know that when I'm ready to take that and have that courage to take that next step, I will. What would it feel like? What would it feel like, though, if you could trust yourself completely? If you were so anchored into you and your energy that you never question your decisions, you never let that doubt creep in, not because you are egotistical, but because you knew there was no right or wrong, only opportunity and possibility. What would it feel like to stop repeating the same lesson over and over again, to find the certainty within you instead of waiting for it to show up outside of you? What would it feel like to know that the exact three energies that block and unlock your prosperity, so that you are always aware of the vibration and what it was sharing with the world? Because the energy that you are in is going to create your reality, right? Whatever your reality is mirroring back to you is showing you your state of being. So if you're in inner conflict, there's going to be a lot of conflict around you. You know, if you're in frustration or anger, you're probably going to encounter a lot of frustrated or angry people. Right? If you're in a low vibration, you're probably going to attract that. If you're in lack, you're probably going to attract a lot of people that are in lack. So like attracts like. So if you're not liking your current reality, you have to take a good hard look at what's happening inside of your own state of being, and then go, okay, this is the state of being I'm in. Okay, let me see what the pattern is. Let me look back through the past couple of weeks, months, years, and see if I can find a pattern. What is the theme that's running through this pattern? And once you find that theme, you can say, okay, how is this showing up in my current reality? And what can I do to choose differently? And that's a hard question to ask, because this is where the self-doubt comes in. Well, what answer is the right answer? And for me, it really was, what's the right answer? What's the right decision? Because I don't want to suffer anymore. I've had a lot of suffering in my life. So I'm always trying to pick the answer or make the decision that's going to create the least amount of suffering. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. I end up picking the one with the suffering. But suffering, again, comes from expectation. So I put an expectation. I've had a history of making decisions based upon these romanticized expectations that I've created in my head of how it's going to go. And when it doesn't match those expectations, I feel pain. I suffer. Instead of taking responsibility, making a decision and going, okay, I'm going to be unattached and let this play out, and be like, well, this is what happened. Instead of attaching, taking it personal, and suffering. It's been a journey. I'm way better today than I've ever been in my whole entire life. But this is what karma is. A lot of people think karma is our parents' pattern, our ancestral patterns. And while there are ancestral karma that's passed down through our DNA, it's just a seeding. It's just a seeding. How it plays out is going to be different for you. And some of that can even come through not just the seeding in the DNA, but the programming of how you grew up. Again, it's just you choosing to do something differently. Or maybe you do have to take the same action. Maybe you do have to get divorced. Maybe you do have to start over. Maybe you do have to end that friendship. But maybe you do it in a different way. Maybe you learn the true lesson in it, which is to choose yourself, which is to love yourself, which is to live authentically. And maybe your parents didn't do that, right? They made the same choice, but they didn't do that. They just kept getting remarried to the wrong people, or whatever the case may be. So it's important that we don't impede on other people's karmic journeys through the act of people pleasing, through the act of trying to keep the peace, because you're not keeping your own peace. You're just disturbing yourself. Be honest. And you choose to stand in your power. You choose to choose yourself. You choose to take responsibility for the choices that you make and make the best of them. Make the best of it from a space of courage, from a space of the big picture. What's going to get me closer to my big picture? What's going to get me closer to my goal, to what I actually want? And maybe that's the problem. Maybe you actually don't know what you want. But again, bringing this back to the original topic of karma. Karma is just a pattern. It's just a pattern. And we think of eye for an eye. We think if you hurt someone, someone's going to hurt you. That's law of attraction, baby. That's law of attraction. So if you hurt somebody, yeah, you're probably going to get hurt. It's probably going to come back to you, because that's the kind of energy you hold. Or you're going to be put up with the same lesson, right? I don't consider that karma. I consider that law of attraction. Karma is a pattern of our own pain, of our own suffering. And the karma is just there to provide the people, places, and things for the lesson to be seen so that we can choose differently. Karma is not a bad thing. And we don't just cleanse our karma. We crystallize it into wisdom by choosing different repeatedly. So remember, you can't keep doing the same thing, dressed a little differently, and expect a different result. You have to look at what's in front of you and say, what is best for me? Even if you're scared. What's best for me? And then you have to make that decision, even if you're scared. You have to break the cycle, the pattern. Because once that pattern begins again, it's going to be all fresh energy. It's going to feel amazing. You're going to think you made the right decision. And maybe you did this time. In my case, it was rarely the case. By midway through that next cycle, I was like, here we go again. The same shit's happening. Maybe it looks a little different. And the energy would build until I was forced and felt the pressure to make a decision. And I would be at the crossroads of making, do I stay? Do I go? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I go right? Do I go left? And I would sit and I would fight in that conflict with myself over what's the right decision, because one looks scary as fucking hell and the other one feels comfortable because it's familiar. And I think, oh, if I change this about me, the whole situation will be different. It rarely was. It rarely was, because if you are in a co-creation with somebody else, which we always are, the people in that co-creation, they're still bringing their energy. You don't change their energy. You only change yours. So they're still putting the same shit in, unless they have chosen to elevate and grow with you, which hardly ever happens, unfortunately. Not impossible. And then something breaks that energy and the cycle begins again. It's exhausting. So when you think of karma, remember it's a pattern, and that pattern holds a lesson. And once you figure out what that lesson is, it gets easier, because now you can say, I know what this lesson is. This is why I'm feeling this way. What is the thing that I know I need to do right now? Even if I don't know how to do it, even if I'm scared to hell to do it, what do I know I need to do? And then do it repeatedly until you have set yourself free. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by JohannaBurkhardt.com, where it's time to defy the limits of your mind and step into your multidimensional mastery. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.